If the previous spokesperson said that it's a man-made catastrophe, I'd add to that it's a Hamas-made catastrophe. Who has turned these hospitals into battle sites? Who has put their military facilities under hospitals? Who has built their bunkers and tunnels and command centers under hospitals?
But I guess the question is, if your intelligence, which we've yet to see in detail, I mean, some of it is beginning to seep out, but if it is correct that Hamas is underneath these hospitals, well, it's that question that I asked you. At what cost are you going to wage your war on trying to destroy Hamas once and for all?
First of all, when this is over, you will see clearly. We'll be able to take people in and show you the Hamas fortifications under the hospital. That's not in question. And though, of course, the official Hamas spokespeople and the hospital directors deny it, they've never seen any Hamas people in the hospital, of course, that's what they'll tell you. But of course, they can't tell you anything else, because in the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip, if you speak out against the Hamas movement or you expose their secrets publicly, you will face violent retribution. That's a simple fact of life. But to answer your question, look, we saw the terrible pictures coming out of the hospital, Shifa, with the babies. Terrible, terrible pictures. But this is a crisis manufactured by Hamas. It's totally unnecessary. We offered and brought fuel for the generators of the babies in the incubator. There's no reason for them to be on the floor like that. And we also offered a humanitarian corridor with ambulances to remove the babies from that hospital in medical care, with medical care during the transportation. Once again, Hamas refused that. Hamas has created an artificial crisis with those babies to score propaganda points.
Okay, I mean, but on those specific points, I mean, plenty of people have said that the 300 litres of fuel that were offered would be utterly pitiful for the need that is present in Shifa at the moment. It could provide maybe half an hour's worth of fuel for the hospital. And in terms of the evacuations that have been offered, again, I mean, doctors, the Physicians for Human Rights group has pointed out inside Israel that these calls for evacuation, it's not humanitarian consideration, they say, it's a deception. It is what it is, a death sentence for the sick, because they are completely impractical.
So I disagree. If there's a will, there's a way. On your first point about the 300 litres, we can bring more if we need more. But the truth is, it was coordinated. That was more than enough for the generator to provide electricity for the babies, which was the main concern. There's no reason, once again, for the babies to be without electricity in their incubators. That it's just a Hamas-manufactured crisis. The fuel is there. And I'm not mentioning, Tim, the fuel that Hamas has for its military machine, which, of course, it refuses to share with the patients in the hospital, but we'll leave that alone. They have, according to our estimations, large amounts of fuel for their tunnel network, for their rockets, for their military structure. But, of course, they're not sharing that with the hospital. Why should they? It's better to blame Israel.
Just to be very clear, I mean, Joe Biden was speaking in the Oval Office just before we came on air and said, it's my hope and expectation that there will be, his words, less intrusive action relative to the hospital. You're saying, we hear you, but we're not going to change the way in which we operate.
No, we're making a maximum effort to avoid harming the people in the hospital, to provide humanitarian support. But it has to be clear.
Well, the maximum effort would be...
Hamas is obstructing, Tim, all humanitarian support. We've provided fuel for the hospital.
And you've made that point, but I mean, you say, forgive me, you say you're making the maximum effort. I mean, the maximum effort, it may be against what you think are your military aims, but the maximum effort would be to stop the fighting around the hospital.
Of course, that's what Hamas is trying to do. And that's why they've created this artificial humanitarian crisis. Of course, Hamas wants us to stop the fighting because we're hitting them hard.
Right. But it's not just Hamas, though. If you've got the American president saying, we hope that there will be less intrusive action.
When this is over, Tim, and we have defeated Hamas, it not only will be better for the people of Israel, who won't have to live in fear of terrorists crossing the frontier and butchering their children in the middle of the night. It'll be better for the people of Gaza, who have had this Hamas terrorist government for 16 years. And what has it brought the people of Gaza? Bloodshed, poverty, misery. They deserve something better too, do they not?
Well, you may put the question, but equally there are those whom you would call allies, including a former director of national intelligence in the US, James Clapper, who has equated Hamas with ISIS, in his words, who says the complete destruction of Hamas will inevitably mean the destruction of Gaza. So you may wish for Gaza to be rid of Hamas entirely, but it will come at a terrible cost, won't it?
There was also a cost to defeat ISIS. The Americans know it well, so do the British. There was difficult urban warfare in both Mosul and Fallujah. In the end, there was a victory, and the people of those two cities are much better off without ISIS in control. And I believe it'll be the same for the people in Gaza. They'll be much better off when this is over.